Hey, this is Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this episode of the Ramsey Dewey podcast with our special guest, Red Chucks. This is an international podcast. I'm in China, he's in the US. The internet connection is not great, but we had a great talk. This is part 1 of 2. Red Chucks is a martial arts YouTuber that you may not have heard of, a friend of mine who recently earned the title of Breaking World Champion. Check it out.
Jordan, why don't you tell us a little bit? Oh man, I just name dropped you, man.
It's our.
Hope that's okay.
I name dropped myself. What was it when I first I entered my first and second breaking tournament? At first I was like, I'll just call myself Red Chucks because my wife, my shoes are Chuck Taylors, that all-star Chucks, and I like red because it's it's a cool looking color. I think it reminds me of power, so I was like, all right, yeah, that's a pretty cool name, Red Chucks. Why not? And that's why I started out. Man, there's just coming to YouTube. That's kind of an interesting thing, It's an interesting world to say the least. So my channel, my first channel, I had another channel. It got taken down, long story short, but I kind of bounced all over the place with a bunch of different things because I have like this bag of random skills, and I was just like, well, I don't know which one anyone wants to see. So I was like throwing, playing cards into apples and busting out with bully song butterfly knives and all sorts of random stuff, and I didn't really have direction. So it's kind of good that the first channel got taken down because I got a little more direction now, and YouTube it's a blast. I mean, at the same time, though, man, you meet some interesting people.
I did not see the playing cards into the apples video. I would be interested to see that. And I got to tell you, probably about 20 years ago, I found this old book called Cards as Weapons. I don't know if you've ever read that one, but it's all about how to throw playing cards with deadly accuracy, like Gambit from X-Men, and like pierce objects with them. And I've seen some videos, like there was this guy like throwing playing cards, piercing like a aluminum siding of a building at some point. I don't know, maybe it was trick photography, but I have heard you can throw them hard enough with enough accuracy to pierce certain objects.
Yeah, so now a lot of people don't know, right? The difference. Okay, so I'm a guy that looks at superpowers and all that type of stuff from a realism point of view. So the playing cards that I was throwing are just your typical playing cards, but they actually make a thicker playing card that's specifically made for throwing that only professional card throwers would know about. So, anytime I'm doing a trick or a something of the quote unquote supernatural nature, I have to look at the science behind. Okay, if this was a superpower like super strength or throwing cards that cut people, what is the science behind it? And then if you're truly trying to obtain a superpower, you just look at the average human. If the average human can't do this, then you've obtained a superpower, right? That's what a superpower is. So,
good point.
Yeah. With card throwing, it was the same thing, I quit smoking probably when I was 20 years old. I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, and I got this nervous tick, because I had picked up my first cigarette probably when I was 10. It was really bad. So anyways, a deck of cards felt like cigarettes. So I kept them in my pocket, and every time I'd get this urge, I'd pull out this deck of cards and just start hucking the things, until I got really good at throwing them. And that's how I developed card throwing skill.
Oh man, that's awesome. Oh. Now, at risk of sending you on a journey of spiraling your YouTube channel into randomness, I would be interested to see throwing playing cards at the apple. At least once, man. At least once.
Maybe I'll make a defense video for it. Self-defense video of how to use cards.
Maybe. Yeah, you don't want to take YouTube advice from me, though. I'm only... I have no idea why I have any success on YouTube at all, to be honest. Because, it was like 13 years on YouTube. Nobody watched my channel except, like 12 people, maybe. I had like 1,000 subscribers. 12 people watched each video. a couple of years ago, suddenly it just started exploding. Which reminds me of a conversation that was going on the other day from some people, some trolls who were trying to troll you on my channel. So I did want to talk to you about trolls on the internet bullies, because they're coming after you, man. They're coming after you, and this is so interesting because you're not like a big YouTuber that a lot of people have in their sights, and yet there are these guys like, oh man, Red Chucks, we got to put him in his place. It's so fascinating. So this guy comes to my channel because I mentioned you, and I mentioned your breaking records. I showed some of that footage of you breaking those stacks of bricks, which was awesome. It was fantastic. But he's like, oh, that Red Chucks, he's the fakest martial artist ever. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This guy doesn't say anything that he doesn't show you, which is something I really appreciate about your channel, is that it's real. It's one of the realest things, you know. There's no pageantry. There's no pretense. It's just, here's a stack of bricks. I'm gonna break it. Boom. You want to know how to break bricks? Do it this way, not that way. I actually learned something really important about breaking from your channel. So when was it? Like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was doing a breaking demo with my elbow. I always used my left arm because I figured if I break my left arm, because I'm right-handed, then at least I'll have my dominant arm uninjured. And I broke a chunk of bone, this little chunk of bone in my elbow from doing this elbow break. And it wasn't until I watched your video I realized why. Specifically because I was breaking with the point of the elbow, with the olecranon right there. And you pointed out in the video to use more of the flat of the forearm right there. And I was like, man, holy crap, I wish I knew that 20 years ago. So, for the trolls out there wondering, this guy's breaking technique is legit. So, man, tell us a little about these internet trolls coming after you, man. Because I've got my own trolls, I've got my own haters out there, but it's just so interesting that no matter how big or small your YouTube channel is, they will come for you.
So here's the thing about people that troll. Okay, I guess you could consider me the ultimate troll, and what I mean by that, like, I'm on tons of different people's channel, but like you said before, it's me, you know. So when I'm saying something, I'm like, if somebody's like, oh, well, you're this or you're that, I'm like, dude, check out my channel. Like, I'm speaking the truth. Like, you know, I see sometimes, I'll see guys bragging about their lifts, and then they'll bully other accounts, other small accounts, because there's like this competition. And so if I see somebody bullying, right, and they're not impressive, I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you're no better than this person. So what? And a lot of accounts are built off of negativity. That's the problem with the internet. It's a lot of it's built off of negativity or just straight up falsehoods. Like, oh man, that's the thing. Getting back to reality. People like to buy into bullcrud. They like drama. They like reality TV, and to a lot of people, that's what YouTube is. And then, the guys that are real or are really doing it, they get pushed to the side because people want drama, they want this or that. And then, oftentimes when I call these people out, I'm like, dude, like, you're not special. Like, do you understand that? There's bigger people, and for me, myself, a lot of people tell me I'm strong or I'm good at breaking, whatever. But people don't realize there's guys out there, right? Like Wim Hof, David Goggin, or Muriel Pudzianowski, the strongman, 5-time world's strongest man. Those guys, right? These guys are also on a superhuman level. And so I watch these guys. A lot of people watch those people and like, oh, well, it's because of this, it's because of that. I'm like, I look at that person, I say, oh, you're a man too. So if you can do it, that means I can do it. And it doesn't affect me the same way. Like, I'm happy that those people are doing it. If they're actually doing it, I'm happy. But it's when you get into the fake stuff, these magic, mystical chi energies and all this other junk, and people don't like that I'm real. I really will say I can do this, and then I'll show you. And people just don't like it. I think a lot of it has to do with people setting their expectations too low, or when they set them high, it's because of magical chi powers. It's like, no, you really want to set your standards high, man. Look at the science. This is how you achieve these things. How do you do it? Pay attention. There's science. There's diet. It's like people don't realize my mind. When I want something, I'm so insanely focused on that thing and so driven to achieve it. And I'll do as much research, as much training, preparation, whatever it takes to try to achieve that goal, even if I fail.
That's so interesting. Especially that distinction you made about superpowers, like the real superpower, meaning being able to do something that most people can't, something real, as opposed to, the fake ones like invisible Hadouken fireballs. And there was this big controversy over in Malaysia the other week about famous YouTuber Chintya Candranaya, however you say her name, because she claimed fake superpowers, basically. This 90-pound girl allegedly smashing load-bearing pillars in a parking garage with her little snap kicks and literally throwing invisible Hadouken telekinesis fireballs, breaking rocks and stuff like that. Now everybody's like, well, of course it's fake, but even so, she got millions and millions of subscribers and viewers who really believed that stuff. And I thought at first, there's no way anybody could believe this. But I got so many comments from people from Malaysia when I made a video about her a few years ago. So many comments from people who really believed it. They said, no, you don't understand. If you're good enough at Malaysian martial arts, if you're good enough at Silat, then you can do magic tricks, is what they were telling me. You can be bulletproof. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. Where does this come from? And I think it's this desire to want to believe in some, I don't know how to term it.
So, going back to superpowers, right? People want to believe they can just meditate, right? Say you could conjure up a fireball, right? Just by meditating. Sure. Let's just put it out there hypothetically. Okay, so all I got to do is sit there and really think about this fireball, and that is so much easier than saying, okay, what type of gas would I need to mix in this type of tube I can carry on my back with an ignition system that actually shoots a fireball? Something like that. Because I've thought about that. If I wanted to have fire bending abilities, there's science. You can make a flamethrower. You can make all sorts of things. The problem is people, they want to believe the unbelievable because oftentimes it's easier. I'd love to be bitten by a radioactive spider and be climbing up walls, that'd be sweet. Infuse my bones with adamantium and give me some claws and I can never die. Cool. That's awesome. That's a great idea, but people don't realize, like, if you really want those, it is so much hard training. So much. And you get broken, you get hurt, you're like, why am I doing this to myself? I don't want to do this anymore. But you want to achieve something legendary more so than not. So that's why you keep driving towards these real life quote unquote superpowers.
Yeah, man, that reminded me of the first time I picked up a book on martial arts. People always ask me, how did you get into martial arts, Ramsey? And the answer is pretty simple. I got beaten up by bullies in school. And I decided, man, I need to learn how to fight back, because I saw these Bruce Lee movies that really inspired me, made me feel like, oh, if I could just do that, if I could punch and kick like him, I could stop the bullies. Where do I learn that? But I grew up in this small farming town. There were no martial arts schools anywhere, so I did. Then the only thing I could think of, I went to the library and checked out all the books on martial arts, like all of them. And the first book I opened up was about karate. And I was expecting magic. I was expecting magic answers. I thought, surely if I learn the secrets in this book, then I will be able to fight off the bullies. On page 1, I got the realest information. It's like the type of book you would write, man. It said, martial arts is not magic. If you want to be good at karate, it takes hard work, lots of exercise, dedication, all of these other attributes that 12-year-old me severely lacked. And I was like, no, I wanted it to be magic. It's not fair. I have to work for it. No.
Yeah.
But it was the most important thing I could have heard at that moment.
And that's, that's a thing that, like, it's the same with physical training, right? Now this is funny, okay? So, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'4", 225, right? And by bodybuilding standards, like a bodybuilder, somebody who uses tons of steroids, all that, I'm just an average heavyweight. Like Muhammad Ali was 235 or something, 230. I was around his weight. So, this brings me to my next point, right? Steroids. People they're always saying that. Typically the trolls, they're like, well, this guy, he's on steroids because he can do something I can't. And then I watch their channel and it's like, bro, you just pounded a Coke and ate the greasiest piece of pizza on camera, and you're like, and don't get me wrong, I like dark chocolate ice cream every now and then. If I'm carb loading before something, yeah, I'll eat pizza, but typically I don't really like pepperonis too. I like, if it's got bell peppers, mushrooms, all that type of stuff, because bottom line, a good quality pizza, it's got carbs, it's got protein, and it's got veggies in it, right? So, and then they make these complaints, and I'm like, dude, don't you do not understand? Like, I don't just wake up like, hey, I'm gonna make a YouTube video today because I want to show. No, it's like I've been doing this since I was a kid. Interesting story about the way I was introduced to martial arts. So we lived on a cul-de-sac when I was a kid, and I'm one of 5 boys. I'm right in the middle. We used to go outside and we'd have like these giant sword battles. Okay, so we have, now they have those plastic lightsabers. We use those a little bit, but we use just white picket stakes, and then you cut the bottom off, turn it sideways, and duct tape it. Now you have a sword, right? So my dad was a carpenter. He used to give me pieces of purple heartwood or epee. They're ironwoods. You can literally sharpen them and make a blade out of them. Anyway, so we used to go have these giant battles and all this stuff, and there was this Irishman that lived on my street. And I remember one day we were having this sword battle, and somebody got their sword knocked out of their hand, and this Irishman picked it up. And he was small, but he liked to play with the kids, on the street. So he starts sword fighting and doing all these cool stuff, and my dad had given me a crossbow. This crossbow only had a bungee cord. The string had broken, so it wasn't very dangerous, but needless to say, he saw that I had a crossbow, and I pointed at him. I was like, drop the sword, And he's like, all right, super thick, heavy Irish accent. Anyways, turns out he was a Wing Chun practitioner and also did 5-form Kung Fu, like with the animals and all that stuff. And he always told me, your forearms. He says, you need to have strong forearms. He said, you feel my forearms? He said, they're like steel. And then he was showing me, all this stuff. He had this bucket next to his Wing Chun dummy, a broken Wing Chun arms. Just broken. Like, I would hit him, and it was so repetitive and so fast that he would snap these arms. So, anyways, I saw him, and I asked my dad about him, and my dad was a pretty strong guy. Naturally, he's always been pretty strong. And he's like, yeah, that's the type of man that has strength, and he was explaining it to me. So, I never, I wanted there to be like superpower, super something, and this and that. And man, I found out the hard way, traditional martial arts just didn't work in the street, so I was like, I gotta start thinking practically.
Yeah, that's so interesting you brought up steroids, and everybody stronger than you is on steroids according to the internet. I can't tell you how many times, like, I have been accused of taking steroids. Me, which, it boggles my mind. I'm like, guys, you do not understand what performance-enhancing drugs are capable of doing to a human body. It's not this. It's not this. But if you exercise, if you train regularly, if you get out there and train and do something every day to get stronger, more flexible, more technical, then compared to the average person, you are superhuman. And when they see that, they want to believe that you achieved that not through hard work and diligence, but rather you achieved that by cheating. by doing something so simple and easy, taking a magic pill. Because it's an easy answer to... What's that?
I meditated and used my chi. That's how I got this way.
Yes. I stood in a horse stance for 12 hours each day.
Oh.
You ever hear anybody bragging about that? Oh. Man, I found this book on Kung Fu. It was this, what was it called? I don't remember. But there was this old book on Kung Fu that I read. It said basically, if you hold a horse stance for like 12 hours a day, it'll grant you superpowers. That was the crux of it. And I kind of bought into this for a while when I was younger, because I didn't like that whole karate and martial arts is really hard and takes hard work and exercise and all that. And I thought, okay, if I just hold the horse stance for a really long time, it will grant me the iron leg technique or something like that, so I can kick through trees. And holding the horse stance won't make you worse. I mean, it can strengthen your legs and all that, but the promise of that book that it would magically transform me into this lethal killing machine. No, you gotta do so much more.
Yeah, and it's like, man, the thing too is like there's sacrifice involved. It's like I said, it's not something you just go out and do, but especially in combat, any type of combat, like growing up, because I was around a lot of different type of people growing up, and man, when I wanted to test my martial arts, right, even if there was other guys that didn't have martial arts training, if they did, if I knew I could beat one, I'd be like, all right, what about you two, or what about you three, what about you four, until even if you're going up against unskilled opponents. I saw a video you did with the grappling, right? When you were grappling with multiple opponents and you're highly trained.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden you have a couple of guys that aren't trained, but they all have a will. Now it becomes a challenge for a trained fighter. So this is something I did a lot. And man, I've broken teeth, broken nose, broken ribs, broken feet, and people don't realize. And then you got, it's really hard, like you're saying, going back to like somebody, I use Adobe effects to kick this. It's like, I've hardened my fist over 20 years of training, and I never even wanted to enter the tournaments per se for me. But like you said, people are always looking at credentials, and you can know in your mind, if you've tested your ability to a degree. And then people are like, oh, well, you don't have a black belt. It's like, yeah, most average black belts, my brother who's never stepped inside of a gym he'd waste them because he's an experienced street fighter. He's probably been, I remember hearing this story about my older brother, man. This one is funny. So anyways, he's trying to clear out a party. Somebody threw a bottle from across the room and hit my brother in the forehead. He started leaking, and my brother is, mind you, 6'8" and 220 pounds. So from multiple sources, my brother beat up 10 people. Now, if you heard that, you'd be like, no, that's bull crud, right? You'd think that. But then you look at it from a scientific standpoint. All those dudes were in a hallway charging at him. So it was only 1-on-1. It wasn't 1-on-10, but he still defeated 10 people.
Also kind of a giant guy.
Yeah. So, but they were in a line, so it's like, you got to find that fine line between reality and legend, and then that somewhere in there, you're like, okay, maybe that's possible, or maybe it's not. And when you really find out that's when the truth becomes the truth. That's when you find the real truth. Like, where do these legends come from? They had an origin somewhere, but where is it, and how do I find that origin? And then you must test it yourself to see if it's a possibility.
Man, I got to tell you, it was so disillusioning and also incredibly empowering when I had this epiphany that most guys who wear black belts don't actually know how to fight. And saying that will probably offend a lot of people on the internet, but I found that to be true. Most people with a black belt in a martial art don't actually know how to fight. And how did I learn that? I'll tell you, by sparring with people with black belts in various martial arts. And it's alarming. It is alarming how easy it is in some schools to get a black belt. You simply show up, you pay the fees, and it's mostly about that in so many places these days, which again is alarming to me because I came from this more old school tradition, and I think anybody who trained back in the 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s would understand that the martial arts used to be more hardcore. Right, you had to not just show up and pay your dues. You had to work for it. You had to fight. You had to, for example, to be a Taekwondo black belt, you had to be good at Taekwondo. To be a karate black belt, you had to be good at karate. To be a judo black belt, you had to be good at judo. And now what people are saying is, well, the black belt doesn't actually mean you're good at the martial art. It's the beginning of your journey. Like, no. Come on, guys. You walk in the door on day one, that's the beginning of your journey. You got a black belt. That should mean that you know the martial art that you are claiming to hold a black belt in. I mean, it doesn't mean you need to be the best guy in the world, but you should be a representative sample of what somebody who practices karate, for example, or somebody who practices Taekwondo does. And if you can't do that, man, a belt is pretty worthless in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, so I talked about at my breaking tournament that I had developed a style, right? So I'm a firm believer in combat experience, sparring, okay, in particular. And like you're saying, a black belt should represent your ability to defend yourself, right? And self-defense, all that stuff, a lot of people just want to hand out A's for effort. So imagine I always tell people, imagine if the military did that. Oh, well, you tried to be a Green Beret, so we're going to make you one. No, that's not how it works. So I developed the system, and I use the belt system, but each belt represents a certain amount of sparring. So like from white to yellow, you have to have 10 hours of sparring with punches and kicks and leg sweeps. And then the second belt is another level or a different style. So it'll be clinching and then grappling and then standing up from grappling, so on and so forth, until eventually, once you reach that black level, the black belt level, you have experienced these different sparring forms for a certain amount of time and learn how to combine them. But then on top of it, okay, so say your form's really good, your technique's great, but you have no stamina and no physical strength. So I also include that in the ranking system. So, for instance, you have to be able to deadlift this amount of weight. You have to be able to hit the bag for this long nonstop. And I've taken a lot of these concepts from traditional styles, like bone conditioning. That's something a lot of professional athletes today, even in the UFC, I think could do more of, myself personally, because quite frankly, man, when a conditioned leg meets an unconditioned leg, you can have the best technique in the world, but if you're not standing on your leg, you're not standing on your leg, And same thing, you could be really great at jiu-jitsu and just get severely overpowered by somebody way stronger than you. Because like you were saying in a lot of
time, man.
Yes, strength is a technique. People don't realize that when I go to do a deadlift, my hips have to be in the right position, my heels have to be in the right position, all these little tiny things to generate maximum amount of force. So if you got a guy that's deadlifting his own body weight for 100 reps in a row, that means he can pick up somebody his size and toss them around. It's like, great.
Yeah. The deadlift, in my opinion, is the single most important exercise that all serious martial artists should be doing. However, think about this for a minute. If there was a deadlift requirement to get a black belt in a martial art, like any martial art, if you had to be able to deadlift like 2.5 times your body weight or greater to get black belt in karate or taekwondo or aikido or any of that, there would be how many black belts in the world today? Probably not very many, maybe more than zero, but not nearly as many as we see today, because people would be like, yeah, but that takes real effort, man. Skip, next. but
And
it
and
is
that
so incredibly useful.
yeah, and that's another interesting thing. You know, going back to like how people get views. You know, not to jump around too much, but views, right? You have these guys that can do triple spinning tornado kicks, super awesome looking, you know, and they do all this tricking and all this flipping,
Sure.
and then you know they get millions of views, and then you have a guy that just, you know, he fights like Fedor. He doesn't. He's like spinning kick, not to match right hook. Like, all right, so he's, you know, he's got this devastating ability, but he's so simple and makes him not exciting, not this, not that, and so people don't want to watch it because they want to see something fancy. They want to see a Showtime kick, or they want to see a backflip Hadouken, and it's like, but that's not, you know, in I always say this, in ring fighting, you can, you know, think about this. If you wanted to get fight of the night, are you gonna do basic things, or if you want to get, you know, promotion or whatever, you have to do fancier moves, right? Because then you get recognized because you have prowess of, you know, striking ability. But in reality, true prowess is simple and effective. So there's a lot more that goes into these you know, professional fights than, you know, going back to the simple, basic, effective. People tell me my style is ugly all the time, and I'm like, hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, you know.
Yeah. Oh man, that's something the untrained don't recognize. And not just the untrained. Often the trained, I should say, the trained who train wrong, I should say. There are a lot of traditional martial art artists out there who've never been in a real fight, and then they watch a real fight for the first time. They watch people actually trying to hurt each other, and they say, "Oh, it's sloppy. They're slow. Their form is terrible," because they're used to doing kata with these crisp, clean, snappy techniques, and their gi gives it a nice little snap behind it, and they want a fight to look like that. And then when they see that a real fight doesn't look like that, they reject it. No, I reject this. That's not real. That's man. I was watching, what was it, Fist of Fury last night with my daughter, because I mentioned something about Bruce Lee, and she was like, "Who's Bruce Lee?" And I was like, "Oh man, you've lived 8 years on this planet, you still don't know who Bruce Lee is? Let's fix this." So we watched Fist of Fury. We pretty much just focus on the fight scenes because, you know, that's why we watch Kung Fu movies, right? And so I'm rewatching Fist of Fury for the first time in a while, and you know, there's a scene. He goes into the Japanese karate school and beats up like 30 guys. But if you look at how he's doing it, it's all simple stuff. He's throwing simple punches. He's throwing simple elbows to guys behind him. I think the most complicated thing he does in that fight choreography is a spinning hook kick. And some people might think, "Oh, that's fancy," because they don't know how to do it, because that's a technique that takes a lot of training to get any good at. But it is practical. It is simple, in my estimation. And it reminded me of why I think Bruce Lee was so compelling to people, especially at that time, was because he was doing movements that were simple and effective. And an average person would look at it and they would think, not I can do that, but rather I could learn that. Like that looks like something real. Whereas if you watch a typical action movie, especially from, you know, that era, the stunts were not within the realm of realism, man.
Yeah.
Especially traditional Hong Kong cinema, people are doing wire fu, flying above the trees and literally throwing fireballs at each other. And then this guy, Bruce Lee, his whole philosophy was, I want to show people something more real. I mean, that was his whole philosophy. And it's so interesting that as a child, when I saw that, it resonated really deeply with me. I'd seen fight scenes in movies before. Everybody has. But something about that, like that's learnable. That's a learnable skill. And I want to learn that. And I think that's something that makes me so excited when I see something real, a real superpower, if you will, that sets people apart from the average person, is the fact that it's learnable. You can achieve that. So
yeah, and you know, going to Bruce Lee, because man, there's a lot of controversy. I know for you, you're like, well, there's no record of his fights, right? So is Bruce Lee real? Is Bruce Lee fake? And in my opinion, I've seen, like you said, his choreography, so I know he had the mindset for it. But a lot of people don't realize one of the reasons he was so simple is he was broken. They never remember he broke his back, right? He was doing the good morning exercise, and I believe he tore his sacral nerve is what it was, which if those of you, whoever's ever had sciatica, it's like a shooting pain that goes down your leg. So a sacral nerve tearing it could be pretty debilitating. So I look at him as a person, right? He had that mental toughness to come back from that injury, but at the same time, if you look at how he portrayed himself on screen, right? He always took his shirt off, right? And he had this presence of intense burning anger, right? And if you remember that one scene where he's fighting all those dudes, and there's that one guy, he's kind of heavy set, and he's got his glasses, and, he's going to fight Bruce, and Bruce is just this, he wasn't the biggest man, but he was physically a prominent individual. So, that right there teaches you something, even if he wasn't a fighter, right? That's, say he was or he wasn't, even if he wasn't, the fact that he knew taking off his shirt, flexing these jacked muscles and yelling really loud, that says psychologically he understood, how to intimidate, right? From a street standpoint, you look at a bear comes to run at you, you yell at it and you open your arms as wide as possible, and the bear will sometimes take off. You've seen it in videos. So he understood the importance of physical presence. It doesn't work on everyone, but 9 times out of 10, if you have enough physical presence, especially in self-defense, man, you can end fights without even throwing a punch, which is my favorite. Nobody has to get hurt. I mean, it's like, but so I think he had a lot of good concepts. I wish he had been alive, because I think he probably would have started getting more challenges, is what I think. But who knows? It's kind of sad. I can't judge a dead man, with as much information there is, there's always, nobody, for me too, nobody knew my breaking capabilities just a month ago. I didn't even know my breaking because I'd never stacked them up against anything. So it's one of those things. I think if you have the abilities, it is good to test them, but I like the 1-inch punch. That was his technique. The punch that I did, I learned that technique from Bruce's books. So, is that real? Yeah, I really used it to break concrete, so I know something about it was real,